All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the monthly Awesome Software Cooperatives meetup. We have book reviews and go over topics like that, white papers, exploring different topics, and pretty much anything about cooperatives and specifically software cooperatives, if it can be that. And today we're going to be doing a book review of Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And this is available on Audible as well as download if you haven't checked it out. So we have a mind map where we usually break things out into different categories and see how things relate. And we've included that. I want to check that out and then maybe have an open discussion and talk about topics for the next meetup. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in.
Great, thanks, Taylor. All right, so I trust we've all listened to the audio. I went ahead and got the Kindle. Simon Sinek is someone that people have recommended to me because he has another book called The Infinite Game, and I like game theory, so it's interested in this. I'm wondering where did we get the idea to use this book or to review this book outside of we wanted to study purpose and stuff? Did it come with a recommendation? Or I should say, who recommended it? Anybody?
I think as far as the recommendations for reviewing the book came from, I think Lucina brought it up as relation to what we were doing for the Spiral book and discussions.
Okay, so sounds good. Let's start with general, I guess, ideas or what jumped out at you from the book, overviews, that type of thing. How did you guys feel about it after you went through it?
I guess a lot of it matched kind of intuition side for me for a lot of it. And so it was hard. It was a little bit hard for me to wade through all of the examples to get down to like one small point. That I guess that'd be one part. And it felt like there was good nuggets in there, but it was a little bit hard for me to get through. The stuff, some of the specific ones I think that kept coming out, there's Southwest Airlines was brought up, and I think a lot of the way that before Volk co-op, doing freelancing, I was kind of leaning towards the common sense ideas and stuff that Southwest seemed to lean into when they got started, when they focused on their why and how do they meet that internally and focus on employees and all the other stuff. And I think that just kind of what for me rolled into my same thoughts on when Bolt got started. So I have a lot of, I guess, a pull to those sort of things because they match the way that it worked for me. But what I was looking for was, I guess, how do you replicate that outside? And that was a little bit harder. And it seemed to be getting those small pieces on how they accomplish those is a little bit harder for me. Anyways.
Good. I'm seeing Lucina said she first read the book soon after it was published, near to 2011. It felt fresh and motivated her. These days, examples and references felt stale and like old news. That could be because she already read the book. All right, for me, for whatever reason, I ended up having to read lots of, business books and marketing books. We just casually ended up listening to a lot of audio there. And this one reminded me a lot of a book that we reviewed a long time ago, like 5 years ago, called Positioning. And I think the name is Jack Trent. So the author, and that book is pretty highly reviewed on Amazon as far as a marketing book. But it basically says, you can only hold a certain position in your customer's mind, and they think that you do one thing. And here it seems like Sinek built on that and said, that purpose that you are all about, you only get to communicate that one specific thing, and you can't really, it has to be very clear and all that stuff. So it's very similar to the positioning book, which, it came out in the early 80s and predicted Chevrolet or GM doing bad, Ford doing bad, and that type of thing because they diluted their brands and stuff. So in any case, let's get into this. So some of the reason why we wanted to read this for me is at the end, like trying to figure out where the why comes from and how to do that. So I definitely want to make it to how why gets created. So probably like the chapter 13 and stuff like that. So it's going to end up being kind of simple. Some of this is reasoning and peeling off what lots of people think are counterintuitive truths or counterintuitive things, and then trying to apply some of his like reasoning for why you want to start with why. If anyone wants to go over these chapters, I can start. The first couple chapters were really slow for me as far as like how he was trying to lay the groundwork. Basically, you don't want to manipulate your customers or your employees. Doesn't really work. You get short-term gains, but the long term is not going to be there. And he uses Southwest and Apple a lot for some of these examples. Let's see here. So the main concept is going to be this golden circle here. Does anybody want to talk about that? Or what did they think about the golden circle in general? I'd probably give an overview here. We have the example here. So why is your purpose, cause, belief, reason for being? How, explaining differentiators. How are you different? And then what is easy to identify. What do you do? So he has some other ways of describing this stuff for the golden circle that later on that we can get into. But for this chapter, we can go with that. Let's see here. When he's giving one piece of evidence for starting with why, he's saying, and this is kind of a like sales and marketing mantra is, people buy with like purchase with their emotions kind of thing. And then they rationalize after the fact. They rationalize their purchase after they made it. And everything you can just think of as a purchase, some types of transaction. So your employees coming to be within your company, that kind of thing. They're going to rationalize it after they feel like it's the right thing. And he talks about different parts of your brain, limbic brain, so on and so forth, saying where you make your decisions and stuff. But that's really chapter 4. And then when we start getting to chapter 5. So is there any chapter that you all want to go over more than others? Okay. So I'm gonna try to race through some of the stuff because I think we won't make it to the final chapters. Go ahead.
Well, let's see. So chapter 5, I guess chapter 6 is probably starting to be more interesting for me personally. The manipulation and other stuff, I guess all of those didn't feel new to me. So it was just, I guess, kind of, okay, yes, I agree, let's go on. When they were talking about trust, I guess it wasn't. Anyways, if maybe starting with trust and going on, because I think some of those, the tipping point may not have, I didn't see how that kind of exactly fit in, other than there's a spectrum for how much trust is needed. Anyways,
Okay.
but if you want to kind of go through and then maybe
Okay.
speak their specific things.
Okay. So as far as clarity, discipline, and consistency, we're talking about messaging, and with your why, you need to make sure that it's very, very, very clear. You only get, again, it's like the positioning. You only get, one time you can only control one thing in your either customer or employee's mind. Being authentic. I think when you're reading a book like this, like a popular type book where it has lots of truisms and things, one of the things where everything seems intuitive, I think a good way to critique the book and try to say that, oh, there's some type of value, is really the priorities. So it could be that, he has 3 things, why, what, how. Well, he's saying why first, like the name of the book is start with why. And you have to do that first. Whereas you hear and read a lot of literature that's like, you need to come out with something. Like, for instance, Peter Drucker, you have to have a customer first. That's one of his sayings. And so if you don't have something that other people want, you're not in business, kind of thing. And so he you can almost look at him as saying the opposite. So then now you got a contention, and then it becomes interesting. That's how I try to read some of these things. Look for the priorities, because you can just have truisms all over the place. But he says one thing's more important than the other. Oh, that might be controversial. So you can dig in that way. So authenticity, well, people generally think that they're authentic in everything that they do. But this chapter was driving home, no, if you do the same thing for a long time, then people can see that you're authentic. And that goes with clarity and all this stuff and being consistent. That's authenticity. So, it's using examples from all over the book repeatedly, but VW, I remember when this car came out, I think it's called the Phaeton. It's like some 380 horsepower wagon. And it's like a really, European style, but really good car. But Volkswagen it's made to be like family cars, it's car for the everyday person. And so when they come out with that, you look at it, and from the positioning standpoint, they call it dilution. You're diluting your brand. And his thing is like Simon Sinek's thing is, we already know what Volkswagen stands for. It's of cars for the regular everyday person. And so when you come out with this luxury car, it doesn't matter. It's better than most of these other ones. It doesn't. Nobody trusts it. And so it's weird because it's not authentic, even though it was a good car. It was a great car, but still inauthentic. So that's, I think, a counterintuitive type truth to me. Because it's saying you can do a good thing and it's still inauthentic. So I found that to be interesting. So differentiation is a false assumption that differentiation happens in how and what you do. Simply offering a high quality product with more features and better service or a better price does not create difference. Doing so guarantees no success. Differentiation happens in why and how you do it. Kind of talking about what I was saying. Again, manipulation. We talked about that earlier. Certainty. I mean, you can hear this from different people define certainty differently, but I think a good definition is kind of like what he's saying here. It's really a psychological concept. Like, certainty is not really, it's just really how you feel, how strongly you feel about a thing. It's not talking about logic, right? So when, like how he's saying here, we can only provide a rational basis for a decision. We can only point to tangible elements or rational measurements. The highest level of confidence we can give is, I think this is the right decision, right? But what you really want to get to your customers, you want to get to that where they feel that the decision is right. That's the second level. And then the best level is I know it's right. And trying to get them all the way there is really trying to get the why. Right. So like when you know your why, the highest level of confidence you can offer is, I know it's right. So again, it's psychological, not logic or anything. Right. Now, trust. This is more for what you could call the internal customer, or your employees. All right. Trust does not emerge simply because a seller makes a rational case why a customer should buy a product. It's not a checklist. Fulfilling our responsibilities doesn't create it, right? It's a feeling, again, like certainty. It's not a rational experience, right? Some of this better definition. So we were talking about the golden circle, the why and the how and the what, right? So some of this it gets applied with a trust. A real value, not just value equated with money. Value, by definition, is a transference of trust. You can't convince someone that you have value, just as you can't convince someone to trust you. You have to earn trust by communicating and demonstrating that you share the same values and beliefs. You have to talk about your why, prove it with what you do. Again, why is just a belief. Hows are the actions that you take to realize that belief? And what are the results of those actions? When all three are in balance, trust is built and values proceed. So the last part, why is just the belief, hows are the actions, what are the results of those actions. So you kind of can superimpose that over things that he says later when he's saying what's are your products and stuff like that. And then you have to balance all three of them or you're in trouble. Now let's try to get through some of this. So this is a good little nugget. Great companies don't hire skilled people and motivate them. They hire already motivated people and inspire them. People are either motivated or they're not, unless you give motivated people something to believe in, something bigger than their job to work toward. They will motivate themselves to find a new job, and you'll be stuck with whoever's left. So this is all under hiring, that little counterintuitive thing. We may have seen this before in your career. So dream teams are not always so dreamy. When a team of experts comes together, they often work for themselves and not for the good of the whole. This is what happens when companies feel the need to pay mega salaries to get the best talent. Those people are not necessarily showing up because they believe in your why. They're showing up for the money. Classic manipulation. Paying someone a lot of money and asking them to come up with great ideas ensures very little. However, pulling together a team of like-minded people and giving them a cause to pursue ensures a greater sense of teamwork and camaraderie. And so we kind of have the reiteration of the leader creating the whys and saying, okay, this is kind of more, you can call it a vision, you can call it, the context, and then people are operating within that context. There's a lot of kind of top-down design in this book. It's geared more towards the general public, so it's not really a lot of like things being developed, like purpose being developed in a democratic fashion kind of thing. But there is another book, which is the workshop manual for this book. I don't know if you've seen that, Lucy, but that one I did get it and thumb through it really quickly, and it does have a whole workshop for getting everybody together and trying to develop the why with all the founders and stuff. So that one's more in a consensus model and stuff like that. All right, so this is all about hiring. Let's go ahead and skip over to the tipping point. So you've got the tipping point. It's trying to talk about how fads or the actual book was talking using examples from epidemiology, so diseases and all kinds of things, like how do they emerge. And of course that's interesting to business people because they want their product to become viral. So tipping point was before the word viral, but it kind of, with the epidemiology, is kind of like the precursor to saying something went viral. And so now you've got crossing the chasm. We see people using that all the time as examples of where do we want to go there. Let's go ahead and so you've got these different categories. You got innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. And just as a quick overview of what he's going to say here, one of the things that I think are counterintuitive, but possibly true, I don't know, but counterintuitive assertion that he's saying is you need to go for the early adopters. You can't go for the early majority. And that is going to require instilling your why. The early adopters listen to purpose and vision, and they are the kinds of people that will pay. That's also, to me, like made possibly true, the counter assertion is that the early adopters will pay. Now that goes against the innovator's dilemma, which says your early adopters, yeah, and your product needs to be actually cheap. And so something that is disruptive as an innovation actually can't be expensive. It needs to be super cheap. And that's how it makes its way through the different stages of people who are going to purchase it. Whereas here he's saying, no, this early group, right? They're gonna pay. They pay you a good deal of money. And those are the people he says the people to the left are the people you like, the people to the right of the bell curve. So late majority laggers, you're not gonna like them. Um, it's kind of interesting. So, and he has some good points where he says the people in the middle, so early majority, late majority, they're really buying you, purchasing you based on price and stuff like that. So maybe some of the early majority might be good, but that 13%, that's who you're really going to want to get at. So there we go. Let's see here. So that's how why affects that, and how why knowing what your why is and communicating it clearly will allow you to get better customers. All right. Does anybody have anything so far?
Um, the not filtering the customers, I guess one of the things that stood out to me was not um, not to take on all customers, just focusing on there are another customer with, I guess what was the quote? It was something like, that customer's money is no different from anyone else's. And um, the idea that you should filter your customers and choose the ones that are aligned with your why, the same as in choosing the employees on the hiring side. And it talked about, like, from the economic side, efficiency, you're not spending as much time. That ties in the dream team for the employee, and then customers that aren't aligned with your why. So their why, what they're trying to do, and your why aren't aligned, it's going to be more work. So you would be able to focus more. That's the practical side, but that all of that seemed good, and putting those sort of things into place for hiring and everything seems like something that we've been learning as a cooperative consultancy and internally, like how to tie all that together. But I think the hiring for the why versus skills is a big deal. And I'd like to see, like, how does that tie in with, it seems where the cooperative is versus where the business for the cooperative. For us right now, that means there's one main business, but someone like in Spiral may have multiple businesses, and it seems like you have to have an overarching why for the cooperative. So Volk would have the why and all of the values and everything else, and then that would roll down into whatever business unit it does. So for the software consultancy side, that would tie in with all of the work that we choose, and then trying to, I guess, hire and get more people that are interested in doing the work and also interested in the cooperative ideas. It seems like it all has to be aligned, and it can't be separated out.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right. So the next stage, start with why, but know how, right? So there's a cone, and the cone it's still the circle, but you turn it sideways, and there's the why on the top, and you've got the how in the middle, I believe, and then the what. So we've got how, we got why types, and we got how types. He uses, Steve Jobs again, and Wozniak as examples. Most people are how types. They're going to go ahead and concentrate on getting things, I don't want to say getting things done, but a bunch of things. Yeah. So let's read this one. So a cone represents a company or an organization inherently hierarchical and organized system. Again, he's being on hierarchies. The sitting at the top of the system, representing the Y as a leader. In case of a company, that's usually CEO. Next level down, how level typically includes senior executives who are inspired by the leader's vision and know how to bring it to life. Don't forget that why is just a belief. Hows are the actions we take to realize that belief, and what's are the results of those actions. No matter how charismatic or inspiring leader is, if there are not people in the organization inspired to bring that vision to reality, build infrastructure with the systems and processes, then at best inefficiency reigns, and at worst failure results. All right, so there were some other things that were cool in here. I think he talks about it might be a different chapter, but he's talking about charisma versus energy. And here we go. Yeah, right here. Right? So energy motivates, but charisma inspires. Energy is easy to see, easy to measure, easy to copy. Charisma is hard to find, near impossible to measure, and too elusive to copy. All great leaders have charisma because all great leaders have clarity of why. So that part would be something to as a truism, an undying belief in a purpose or a cause bigger than themselves. And he's talking about Bill Gates, and we don't like him here, so we just gonna go ahead. Let's not read the rest of that. Charisma has nothing to do with energy. It comes from the clarity of why. It comes from absolute conviction in an idea bigger than oneself. When he talks about Bill Gates and he's like talking about everyone, people, like having he says Bill Gates' superpower basically is optimism. And, if you're writing software in 1992, 93 for DOS, the 640K limit, and he was saying nobody needs more than 640K, that's the first thing that jumped up to me is just stop it. And then, of course, he's saying the internet is not going to be that big of a thing and all that stuff like that. I'm like, okay. But in any case, we let's not get too much into that. So energy can always be injected in an organization to motivate people to do things, bonuses and all that. So energy is like manipulation. Steve Ballmer, I do like his examples there because Steve Ballmer would get up on a stage and act crazy and scream developers over and over. And the people would get whipped up and, start, doing some things or whatever. But again, manipulations and all that stuff. But charisma, on the other hand, is his argument here is going to be that's where the why comes from. All right. Yeah, so why and how types we've already gone through. Most people in the world are how types. Counterintuitive thing. How types don't need why types to do well, but why guys, for all their vision and imagination, often get the short end of the stick. Without someone inspired by the vision to make it reality, most why types end up as starving visionaries. All right. A clear sense of why sets expectations. We don't know the organization's why. We don't know what to expect, so we expect the minimum. Price, quality, services, features. It's a recurring theme in this. All right, let's go on. Now we're talking about what. So he starts getting more into when you're describing the let's say your ad campaign, that's whatever products that come out of your entity, your organization, that's going to be the what, right? That the result of the actions, like we said earlier. And I think that this actually was a decent example when he talks about Apple and the kinds of, you want to just call it market segmentation and use the terms that everyone else has used, but when he was talking about Apple and he had this this ad when he says think different, and then they show ads of Pablo Picasso, Jim Henson, Alfred Hitchcock, and some of these people, when you show those people, the kinds of people that want to be like those people, right, you draw them, and the kinds of people that don't, which is plenty, like some people just don't even care about them, they don't really come to you. But that why, now you've drawn a circle around the people that share your purpose, your why, and now it's hard for somebody else to take them. And he uses that as an example. So as you could look at it as market segmentation and all that stuff, but I think his way of describing it is a little more human, and it's kind of his argument for the mechanics of it seem pretty good. And I think that is something that Apple actually, they do well. So let's go ahead. Communications. Does anybody have anything that they want to add? All right. I thought this chapter was interesting because just logos in general are kind of interesting. Like, how is it that they work? And you think just someone putting a logo through repetition in your face, that could be, how much of that is where the power comes from, that repetition. I think if you see a message 36 times, then you start to believe it, or something to that extent. It starts to affect you. Logos, same kind of thing. But his argument seems to be, you have to couple the logo with the why, the purpose, and then they kind of play off each other at that point. So you've got symbols, he's using American flag and stuff like that, where you can have symbols, which, and logos, same thing. They can get to the point to where they hold so much emotional content or like value to people that they're willing to do crazy things for them, be violent, whatever. He's saying in the book, I've never seen someone with it, but people put Harley tattoos and they don't even own a Harley. That seems kind of like they definitely got their purpose set. If indeed starting with why is why they were able to capture the market and everything. But really the interplay for this chapter, the interplay of logos with why, I thought was very useful. It kind of makes it to where we trying to concentrate on the beauty of the logo, and most people do that. And I guess you can make a argument. I guess it's also reflects that your logo reflects how much you care. So it's still going to kind of reflect your purpose, in as much, like if you say you're a design company and you don't care about your logo, then your purpose is not going to be beautiful logos for sure. It's probably just going to, people aren't going to like you. So I think that's something to keep in mind when you iterate on your logos and when you iterate on your messaging and your symbols and everything, is this consistency in your purpose. Okay, so now when the why goes fuzzy, I thought this was a good contrast. So achievement versus success, right? While we can easily lay down a path to reach a goal, laying down a path to reach the intangible feeling of success is more elusive. Achievement comes when you pursue and attain what you want. Success comes from a clear pursuit of why you want it. Okay. I kind of like when people try to define things that other people have defined, because it's hard. And so instead of saying success is a journey, which is, you hear truisms like that, this one says it comes when you are in a clear pursuit, okay, the journey part, of why you want it. Of why. So that, kudos for trying to attempt to define something that lots of people have tried to define. The former is motivated by tangible factors, while the latter is something deeper in the brain where we lack the capacity to put those feelings into words. Success comes when we wake up every day in a never-ending pursuit of why we do what we do. I think that's useful. So I think that he has lots of examples in the chapter. One of them was like Walmart. There are other books that talk about when the leader, he's going to talk about this in a later chapter, so I don't need to do that. But when it's easy to start out with your passion about whatever it is that you're doing, and then you concentrate on, especially the business types come in and say, okay, we need to optimize, and here are the, dot these I's, cross these T's, make sure your manufacturing is a certain way or whatever type of product you're putting out. And then you're all about let's say if you were BMW, you're all about the BMW 330 or something like that, your flagship, whatever it is, and how it performs and all this stuff like that. But you got away from, like, I think BMW's why is like driver experience or something like that. Getting away from that, then it'll become fuzzy, and you'll do something like what VW did. Maybe they start to do lower class cars, all types of other things like that. Get away from the art of car making, those types of things, and then you're gonna be hurt. So here, passion, like, so again, it's kind of related to to energy. When you start out really strong, I think he's also talking about scale in this. When you start out really strong, you have a couple people, maybe one person with the vision, and they have the why. It's not scalable, because if they're communicating only from their mouths, right, and not having other people who repeat it, their gut reactions to different decisions and stuff like that, and they're not like crystallizing the why and then making it so that other people can reiterate and repeat their why. And then as you get bigger, then that's what his argument here, that's what causes a problem. So there's like a split where you can have one person with a strong why, and then you've got the how and then the what's. But as you tackle bigger and bigger problems, and you get more and more people, and you're trying to scale up, your cone can get messed up. Like the why gets too small because there's not enough of a megaphone there, right? There's not enough messaging coming from that. The how can get bigger and the what can get bigger, but you're going to be out of balance. And then because that message is not there, then like what the previous chapter says, it gets fuzzy, right? So let's go down to passing the torch. There's a book, From Good to Great, that I think makes this case pretty well. When there's a certain kind of a leader, an influencer, that they can do everything right. They dot the I's, cross the T's, all that. And they can even do this why thing. But there's something in there, like a little streak of ego, where people, when they leave from some organization, they kind of want to see it fail. And so that happened with Chrysler and Lee Iacocca, where he was supposedly really good, like they were failing and he was able to bring them back, all this stuff. But he had an ego, and he wanted Chrysler to fail. The way that they won't set someone else up to be to come after them, the successor. So that, I think this is kind of a warning against that. They need to share your same passion and your same, I guess, purpose and why and all of that stuff. But it's like easier said than done. So when we're talking about large groups, large entities, it's easier said than done, because it seems like it's kind of like I don't know, maybe it's kind of maybe like empty nest syndrome with kids, and they say, the kids leave and they were depending on you, but now they don't need you. And you could do weird stuff to maybe not assist them in it as much as you could. Those types of things. I think there's something there with the problem with trying to choose a successor and pass on that why. So now, origin of the why, and we're coming up on the hour, but we've got 10 more minutes. This is the thing that I think is useful. It's simply this, and he says, finding your why is easy. It's essentially what you already believe. It's what you already want to do. So he gives an example. He's saying, for Apple, Steve Jobs, Wozniak, they're coming from hippies, 60s, 70s. People were, there was a revolution, and he's very much about revolutions. He's going against Big Blue, IBM. I didn't know this. I must have missed it in a biography, but Steve Jobs and Wozniak made a little phone hacking system. They never used it or sold it or anything like that, but the author here, Sinek, uses that as an example, as like they were trying to be revolutionaries and stuff like that. But that's part of their passion and where they're coming from. You can't say from now on we believe this. You have to look at whatever it is you've been doing, what is that you're passionate about and stuff, and then you can do something. Then you can kind of figure it out. So the why does not come from looking ahead at what you want to achieve and figuring out an appropriate strategy to get there. It is not born out of any market research, right? It does not come from extensive interviews with customers or even employees. It comes from looking in the completely opposite direction from where you are now. Finding why is a process of discovery and not invention, right? Okay. So does anybody have anything to say about that so far? So this new competition chapter, it's kind of what you may have heard people, they have a struggle between do you concentrate on like opposition type research and care about what your competitors are doing, try to differentiate yourself and these types of things, or do you ignore your competitors and you do everything internally? So Josh is here. You've got, what is it, Michael Porter's 5 Forces, I think it's called, and then a SWOT analysis: strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? So they force you these things. So those are like that is the like strategy guru for MBAs, right? And he says you have to look internally and you have to look externally. As far as opportunities, those will be your customers. Those external, customers. What's going on in the market? Threats, those are your competition. You have to look at all of it. Within strategy, they always say you have to look at internal and external. So when someone says something like, we don't really, they do something over there and we're not so concerned about it, it's a strong statement. It's a strong position. So he kind of stops short from saying completely ignore your competitors altogether. But he kind of alludes to that stance. It's kind of like, if you don't like us, then maybe you should go with them. So that's where I got that. So the whole new competition is the way you're competing only against yourself is the idea here. So what do you guys think?
I guess I agreed with it, but it makes sense to me from more of, you're going to be aware of your competitors, but you shouldn't focus on them. So I guess that kind of goes with what you're saying. They didn't go all the way and say completely ignore everything. But that shouldn't be your focus. I think there was an earlier chapter where it was talking about companies that are hyper focused on all of their competitors, and that's because they're focused on the what and how. So everything is about copying, getting every feature. Is that feature what's getting them a little bit more money or saving them a little bit so they can reduce the cost? And hyper focused on that. And that doesn't allow you to focus on, I guess, building the real trust and everything else. So this seems to build on all the other things that the book was talking about. So it makes sense to me.
Okay. Anyone else, and any final critiques of the book as a whole?
That's a I like the position. I mean, it makes sense to get better. It's just that you better have it's pretty risky because you better be doing the right things that you're doubling down on. Something I learned later on is essentially like, I used to be like, oh, well, what those other guys are doing, they're not doing it right, or they should be doing this or that. And I think it may have been in a previous meetup, but that's assuming ignorance. But I think that's a mistake, is that, you should assume, I think I'm getting the correct phrase wrong, but, you should assume intelligence. Like, your competition is in business for a reason too. And so if they're not doing something, then maybe they've already tried what you're doing. and failed. And so now they're doing what works. Or the opposite, but it's like, I know it's saying don't completely ignore the competition, but if you're just focused on you, it's just, I hope you're pretty confident that what you're doing is the right thing, and you're not, by not looking at what how the market is moving. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else as far as final critiques and stuff?
I guess to respond to what you're saying, Josh, the way I was looking at it was not that you couldn't look at other competitors or even partners, how they're doing it, or look at methodologies and processes for doing things that are existing, like going to experts and saying, what's been happening out in the field. So that's in reference to say a lot of what Southwest did was via intuition, apparently, versus going and saying, how do you build a organization that has employees that care and have trust in the company? I don't think that you have to eliminate looking at experts and looking at competitors. I think it has to do with when you're going to look and get help and whatever you're going to do to make yourself better as a group. You should come at it from the standpoint that you already know your why. So don't go out and just copy them and think they're doing well, so let's do what they do. You're going to say, is what they're doing in alignment with your why? Just because they're doing well doesn't mean that it's going to work for you long term, so sustainably. So if you copy someone and it doesn't fit your why, you may in the short term make money or be successful from some standpoint, whatever that means. In the long term, though, it's not sustainable because it'll be that out of balance, that split that can happen because you're focusing on the what and the how versus the why. Otherwise, if you go out and whatever it is, you look at a competitor and you say, what are they doing? What could we learn? What do they have that fits in with our why? You go, oh, they're doing this thing over here that's totally different from us, but we could adopt that and it fits perfectly with our why and can deliver it can be the what that I think there's something in the chapters that talked about that. Your what supports your why. So you're giving your why first, and then the whats are going to support it, show that your why was a good thing. So if a competitor has a better what that supports your why, by all means, adopt it. If it doesn't, though, then at least what the book is suggesting in my mind would be don't adopt whats and hows that are against your why.